give it one more minute, and then we'll kind of get underway in terms of today. So just to kind of set the scene, so we've been running these webinars quite frequently, actually, of all different subjects over the last kind of 18 months, 2 years. So we've been doing a series of webinars on kind of all sorts of different things around Office 365. We've been doing regular updates around Microsoft Teams, and obviously I think as we've seen Teams develop.
No, it was literally a meeting.
Oh, Jack, could you just keep an eye on microphones for me, please?
It's just a glitch.
Brilliant. So yeah, we've been doing kind of regular updates in terms of kind of Microsoft Teams, and I think we've seen how far, you know, if and I'm assuming you guys are using Teams because obviously joining the session today, but actually how much Teams has developed, you know, particularly since the start of the pandemic. I think one of the things that's really kind of accelerated is kind of those kind of features and development within the product. That actually means it's now a little bit more than literally just being able to send chat and instant messages between colleagues and kind of third parties as well. But actually some of the enhancements that have come in terms of running effective meetings, obviously with the very new, you know, in the news about the latest variant, and I think a lot of businesses have now adapted a more hybrid working model, which in itself brings some challenges. So whilst Teams is quite good, you know, that kind of personal piece and actually being able to interact and share information and things like brainstorming ideas, etc., it has been a little bit more tricky. Now there's some developments that have come out, particularly in the last couple of months, which have kind of helped to run kind of more effective meetings, and they've really enhanced some of the tools around that and made that a little bit more interactive. So in terms of today, we're going to kind of go through. So we're not going to be going through the absolute basics of Teams today. We're going to be going through very much the update, very much the products that come through. Oh, seems to get locked. Okay, let's just see if that's any better. Right, that's better. Sorry, I was just suddenly kind of hearing myself come back through the microphone again. So we're going to go through one, setting up meetings in Teams. Again, I know we've covered this in previous sections. The reason why we're going through that again is there are some new tabs and features that have now appeared that have probably gone unnoticed in terms of what you can do. We're going to talk about things like live transcription and some of the improvements around that. Some of the updates around whiteboards. So one of the things you've probably seen in Teams, if you've gone ever to kind of share your screen, the whiteboard feature has been there almost right from the very start, but it's always been a little bit rubbish. Probably more better way of saying that, but it's always been a little bit rubbish in terms of the way that works. So there's been some real enhancements come through to the whiteboard and how we can start to interact with each other. And actually where that enhances even further is about sharing what's called now camera effects. So we're going to show you today how you can actually share a physical whiteboard and how, you know, if you're in a meeting room, you've got people joining remotely, that we can still actually use a real pen and a whiteboard and be able to jot down and kind of really easily to share those kind of ideas and that kind of brainstorming information. We're going to talk about kind of recorded meetings with live transcriptions and how easy that is now to view. Teams channel notifications. So actually now how we can start to get our systems generating alerts into Teams by, and again, this is actually a feature that's been there a while, but kind of recapping that because a lot of people have kind of missed that functionality, that we can actually get notifications from various systems, actually just pinging an email alert into Teams as well. And then dependent on time how we get on, we're going to kind of touch on the shifts application. So in terms of kind of managing shifts and time management, it's one of the free apps that's built into Teams. So that's kind of really set the scene. Hopefully that's kind of bought us a little bit of time as well. So we've got everybody that's joined that's coming today. So we'll kind of get underway. If you just a bit of housekeeping, so if you've got any kind of questions as we go through, if you could pop them in the chat box at the top, if you click on there, I will come back to those at the end. I would ask if kind of people could keep their microphones on mute kind of while we go through the session. But like I said, we will come back to kind of questions and answers toward the end if there's anything that you want me to go over. We are recording the session today, so Jack will share a link with you to the recording as well. So if there's anything that you have missed or you want to kind of go back through it again, we'll send you the recording so that you've got the ability to do that. Brilliant. So if I just kind of crack on and share my screen, so just a bit of organisation of windows. Okay, perfect. Okay, so I'm sharing a screen. This is kind of obviously our 365 demo environment, and I've kind of got a load of additional kind of users and teams and things like that set up within here. So the first thing that we're going to go into today is actually going into the calendar and the additional options that we've got now in terms of setting up meetings. It's quite easy for some of this stuff to go unnoticed. Like I said, there have really been some enhancements in here. Now, if I go to create a new meeting up in the top right hand corner and I quickly create a meeting, so I'm just going to so we'll call this we'll say it's some training, and we'll just invite Nesta to this meeting, and I'm just going to quickly create that. I'm not going through kind of the other details today, but I just want to quickly create a quick meeting for Nesta to attend, which is kind of booked here at 10:30. Now, if I go into this meeting now, one of the things that you'll see along the top here is once I've created, I've got a load of additional tabs that have appeared. Now, a lot of these have been here for some time. So things like the chat, so we can have pre-meeting chat. So if we've set up a board meeting or a department meeting, and actually we want to know what it's about, yeah, we can have some conversation here so that everybody can see. So if there's any questions and answers prior to it, we can deal with that. Again, some of this stuff I've covered off in previous sessions, but just to quickly recap. If we've got files that we're sharing, so again, if there's an agenda, if there's minutes of the last meeting, there might be some reference documents that you want to make sure that people read. It's quite good to actually share those within here. So typically what we would do is send this out in emails after the last meeting that we've had. We would send out the minutes, we'd set out the agenda for the next meeting and any other kind of reference documents. Now, if I don't, if like me, kind of hate trawling through emails trying to find that specific information to do with that meeting, it's a lot easier to actually just click in the calendar and see all of those files linked and saved to the meeting itself. Just makes it a lot easier from an organisation perspective. The meeting details, which is kind of where we first set that up. The scheduling assistant, where we can see who's attending this. Sorry for skipping through, but we're going to get to the new bits. Meeting notes. So again, if you've got somebody that's taking minutes of the meeting, actually we can take notes straight here as well. And again, they're all saved and attached directly to the meeting itself. And I can go into this after the meeting. So if this meeting was last month, I can go back into the calendar within Teams and I can still access all of this information. Really, really easy to do. So where we'll kind of skip into now is the whiteboard. Now, the whiteboard has been, as I mentioned earlier, has actually been in Teams for, almost from the beginning. But as I said, it was always a little bit basic in terms of what you could do in here. Now, there's been some enhancements. Now, originally, if you've ever used the whiteboard before, you would have really seen this tray icon along the top. So you could pick some different color pens, you could highlight things, and I think there was previously a sticky note. Now, what you can do now is that we've got some additional tabs and buttons that have been given on the left-hand side. So this is, like a virtual whiteboard that we've got in our meeting room. So if I wanted to add a note, I can go and add a sticky note on here, and I can start to type away and make my notes. If I wanted to, add some text or some shapes, So again, if I wanted to, put an arrow in here, I can kind of do all this kind of stuff, and really start to bring the whiteboard to life. So if I'm annotating information in here, it's pretty easy and straightforward to do. I can also add things like images. So again, if I've got, what have I got an example? I've got an example of, I don't know, ground layout. So if I'm perhaps sharing an image here, sorry, the image quality on this is really poor. But again, now I can actually start to, if we're going to discuss this and we're sharing this image or this diagram or this flow chart or, whatever it may be over Teams, we can now start to annotate stuff. So I can say, well, actually that tree there we want to get rid of, and I can start to draw arrows on it, etc., etc. So we can be really quite interactive now with the start of content, with the content that we're popping in here. We've got things like reactions. So again, I can add, little applause symbols if you've got a use for doing that, etc. But again, having a look here, you can start to see that we've got lots of different things. Now, what they've done with these new set of tools is they've actually added some templates in there for us to use as well. Now, when you're using the whiteboard is it's basically an ever expanding canvas. So like where you've got you've potentially got a whiteboard in the meeting room in the office where you've only got a set amount of space and then you've got to rub it off and start again. Within the whiteboard itself, we can just start to drag things out of the way. So we can move this canvas wherever we want. So we go, well, actually, we finished with this bit. Let's drag that over to the side. And in this case, I want to start to create something new. So, and I'm now going to use a template. So they've now built some templates into here to get us started and to start to using things. So as an example, if I kind of go into a strategy template, and again, the whole point is go in here and have a look at it, but we've got a template here for a SWOT analysis. So actually, I'm going to drop my SWOT analysis template in here, and we're going to use this and share with the people in the meeting of how we're going to start to manage and actually add and brainstorm notes and ideas in here. Now, the important thing to note is that whilst I'm sharing my screen with you, and bear in mind this is in kind of my demo environment, so there's nobody else actually joined this meeting in the background. Any other attendees of this meeting, one, will see this canvas, but secondly, they can interact with it. So they are able to add, if we were working on strengths and weaknesses, etc., some other people in the meeting could be adding notes within the weaknesses section. I can be adding notes within the strengths section. So this is a tool and a canvas that we can all interact with in terms of joining the meeting. So again, quite easy to use. You can see, if you've ever seen this before, it's kind of enhanced. I wouldn't say massively, but it's a lot better than it was. But actually now we've got a workspace or a canvas or a whiteboard that we can all start to make notes and jot on and interact with and annotate as well. When we finished with this, and again, please feel free to kind of go in here and have a look. But if we've now finished with our whiteboard and we've come, towards the end of our meeting, or we want to go back in here, what we want to make sure that we can do is that we can share this, this brainstorming that we've done, and we want to share that with the rest of the team. So yes, they can just go into the calendar, go into the meeting itself by going into the calendar and clicking on the whiteboard tab along the top. But what you can also do is you can actually just export that image out as an image file, as a PNG file. So if I click on the little cog symbol up in the top right hand corner, I can do export the image. That will quickly go in and download that for me. So now if I go into my downloads folder in here, I've now got my canvas. So this was kind of the first bit I've done, and then I've got my SWOT analysis that I can now send this file out to perhaps other people in the business, not necessarily people that were attending that meeting itself. So apologies, it's quite basic in terms of what I've done on there, but the principle is that we've now got a canvas that we can share, and it doesn't matter if kind of people are in the office or not. Now, extending that kind of idea further from a whiteboard perspective is, yes, that's quite good in terms of doing that electronically. But sometimes if you perhaps haven't got a tablet device, or where you can use your finger as the pen, or if you've got an electronic stylus that you can actually annotate. Sometimes annotating things using a mouse can be a little bit awkward, and some people would prefer to use a physical pen and a physical whiteboard to do that. Well, one of the new features that's come out is that we can actually now do that. So in this case, if I go into, I'm going to go in and join this Teams meeting. So what we can see here now is this is me joining a meeting. I've got another laptop set up in the room I'm in, so I'm going to have to go move over in a second. But this is the camera that I've got set up on within the room I'm in, and you can obviously see here that I've got a flip chart that's set up in the background. And now, what I can do, so at the moment I'm not sharing this with anybody that would potentially be attending this meeting. This is just my webcam switched on. I'm just not sat in front of that camera, but in the background I've got my whiteboard. One of the things I can do now is, if you've run meetings previously, if you go to the share button along the top, which is that kind of little up arrow, we've now got another option that's appeared here that says share content from camera. So if I now click on share content from camera, it gives me 3 different options. So the one that we're really going to focus on today is the whiteboard. But what you can also do is, if you've got an appropriate camera to do so, if you've got an A4, if you've got some paper documents that you actually want to share with somebody, and not necessarily scan them in and share them around, or you don't necessarily want to email them, but actually I just want to show people the image of that bit of paper that I've got on my desk. You can have a webcam that kind of points down onto the desk, and you can share a document using an external camera. I'll show you kind of how this works with the whiteboard, but the principle is exactly the same. So in this case now, I'm going to go and share this whiteboard. Now what the camera will do is, prior to sharing this, it's going to see if it can detect a whiteboard in the background. So in that case, I don't know if you saw that, it kind of very quickly highlighted in green around it. It detected the edges of the whiteboard, and it's gone, right, okay, I can see that there's a whiteboard in the background here, and it's brought it into focus. Well, yeah, it's brought it into focus from that extent. So I'm now going to click on share. And what this is doing now is I've written a couple of things on there and I'll pop over to the board now in a second, but it's starting to detect what's actually on the board itself, and it's highlighting the text that I've written. What you'll also see is it's kind of grayed out the background. Now, what you're going to see now is, and one of the challenges if you were doing this with just a straight camera, is if I'm stood in front of the board and I'm stood in front of the camera, you're not going to be able to see what's on the board itself. Now, if I just kind of pop up and pop over to the other room, hopefully one of the things that you can see now, apologies you can't see my head, but I'm here, is if I actually now stand in front of the whiteboard, you can still see the text that I've previously written on here. And as I start to annotate, and perhaps I'm going to just draw some, sorry, my pen's a bit rubbish, but if I draw and annotate on here, it starts to detect what I'm writing on the board, or if I'm writing away, if I'm putting another box on there, etc. It will detect and highlight that text. So again, if I stand in front of the camera and I start to write away, you can still see what's written on that whiteboard. So if I'm now doing some brainstorming and I want people to attend and join that meeting, I can actually still use a pen, share that content, and that people can see. Really quite useful, particularly where, sometimes just using a mouse isn't necessarily the easiest thing to do. It's quite nice just to have a pen occasionally and to be able to draw and annotate. That same principle works with a document. The only thing I would say is you've got to have an appropriate, to have a webcam, an external webcam to be able to do that. So if you're using just the camera on your laptop, built-in camera to your laptop, sharing a document is a little bit, it can be a little bit awkward if you've got a piece of paper on your desk. But if you've got an external web camera, so just, I don't think so, just a normal webcam, if you can adjust that on your desk, so it's pointing down at your desk, you can use that same principle to actually share using a piece of paper. Again, if you want us to show you that, reach out to us after it and we'll kind of go through that bit in more detail. But some of this new technology that's coming out is really quite good and really useful. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly just pop out of my meeting here now. One of the other things that they've added into here, so if I go back into setting up my meeting, so just to explain there, I've left the meeting, I've now gone back into the calendar, and I've gone back in as the meeting organizer, setting up the meeting again. So if we can just ignore that I started the meeting previously. One of the other things that we've got in here now is breakout rooms. Now, breakout rooms came out actually at the back end of last year, which was something that was kind of heavily requested. But again, the functionality within breakout rooms was quite basic when it was first launched, and there were a few problems in terms of making that effective. Now, we're coming up to a time of year with kind of Christmas parties. I know some people that aren't necessarily hosting physical Christmas parties, and they're perhaps getting people to join, or they're having meetings where they're having team meetings when they want bringing the whole company together. But you might potentially want people to break out into different groups to go and talk about a particular subject or an idea, and then come back into the main room to present their ideas of what they've done in their smaller groups. Now, we can do that in Teams using breakout rooms. So if I click into breakout rooms along the top, now, firstly, this is one of the things that's changed. Historically, with breakout rooms, until recently, you could only set these up within the meeting itself. So you have the organizer would have to start the meeting. Then during the meeting, you would go and set up the breakout rooms and have to assign people. So people would just have to kind of sit around waiting, and you couldn't set these up in advance. You can now set breakout rooms in advance, as we can see here. So in this case, in fact, let me just kind of remove these two rooms. So if I go and want to create some breakout rooms, I can say how many rooms do I want to create? Well, I've only got 3 people invited into my little demo meeting here, so I'm just going to create 2 rooms. Somebody's going to be lonely. And I can see here that I've got 2 participants that I've got invited to this meeting. Obviously, we wouldn't normally use breakout rooms with only 2 people, but if you've got 30 or 40 people joining the meeting and we want to split people out into groups, it's quite easy to do that. And you can create, I think it's up to about 99 breakout rooms if you want to, so you can have lots and lots of people joining and split them out into smaller groups. So in this case, I've created 2 rooms. I can now assign the participants to the individual rooms themselves. And I can do that automatically or manually. So if I've got a large group of people and I perhaps know that, Joe doesn't get on with Anne very well, so I'm not going to put them in the same room together. I can manually choose what groups I kind of put together, or what typically is just you can just assign them out automatically, so it will evenly split the number of people that you've got in your meeting across those various breakout rooms. So in this case, I'm going to do that automatically, and I can see there it's now assigned 1 participant to each room. If you go to the little cog symbol over in the top right hand corner, you can also go to the room settings, and in here we can now assign additional presenters to manage breakout rooms. If this is something that you've ever wanted previously, historically only the organizer of the meeting could manage the breakout rooms, which sometimes you get other people setting up meetings and you might want somebody else to actually manage this whole process. This facility wasn't available previously. So in here, I might actually want to say that actually I'm going to allow Nesta to manage the rooms as well as me, so the burden's not just on myself. I can then set things like a time limit. So again, just to explain the concept here, again, if I've not explained it clearly previously, I am setting up a master meeting room. So if we can imagine we're perhaps going into a hotel, we're going into the main conference room where we're going to bring everybody together. And then we're going to siphon people off into smaller rooms so that they can go and discuss or discuss specific subject matter, or we want them to brainstorm in smaller groups or within their departments. But ultimately, they're then going to come back into the main conference room, so that they can present their ideas and everyone's back together. Now, what we can do here is that when we get to the point that we're going to siphon people off into the smaller rooms, we're going to assign a time limit. So we can say that actually, we're only going to give you 10 minutes or 9 minutes. We're going to give you 10 minutes to go and discuss whatever we're going to ask you to go and discuss. But automatically, after 10 minutes, it's going to close that room down and it's going to move everybody back into the main meeting room. And I can set this to automatically move people to the rooms, and I can let people return to the main meeting room early if they finish what they're doing. So if they've finished after 8 minutes, they can leave and come back straight to the main room. So from there, that kind of sets everything up. So in fact, if I just assign, because I've made less, and let me just get rid of Nesta as a presenter in this case, because okay, if I just assign participants, so Nesta's room 2, I'll just pop Lee in room 1. Cool. So now when I go to join my meeting, and kind of forget the whiteboard bit in the background now, that's kind of from previous, but now when I go into my meeting, if I go to my toolbar along the top here, so I've now got everybody attending this meeting. So in fact, let me just pop in here and join these two. Okay, so now when I join these guys, oh, sorry, I've got somebody not on mute. Okay, that's better. So now when I go into, so now when I'm in my meeting room, I can see that Nesta and Lee have both joined the meeting. So I'm going to do the main presentation, let people know what they need to do, and let them know right now we're going to send you off to your breakout rooms for what we want you to discuss. I can now, as the organizer or one of the assigned presenters, click on breakout rooms at the top within the meeting itself, and I can go and open those rooms up. Now, what this will do is start to automatically move the participants. There we go. It's moving the participants out of the main meeting, and it has popped them into their individual rooms of where we've asked them to go and discuss their kind of subject matter. If we've finished, we can, and we want to bring everybody back early, we can go and close the rooms down. It'll fetch everyone back into the main meeting. But as the presenter or as the meeting organizer, I can go and join each of these rooms individually if I wanted to, go and talk to the guys, make sure they're getting on okay, make sure they've got no questions and they understand the task that they've been assigned, and I can kind of drop into each of the individual rooms themselves. So that's kind of breakout rooms. Again, a bit of a whistle-stop tour of that, of what it does, but it's more now that we can set all that up in advance, and we can have multiple people that are organising and setting those up. Okay, so let's just close those down. Worry about that a second. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is, so one of the things that you've seen today is that we're recording the meetings. So it's something that I would suggest that you do for as many meetings as possible, because it's something that you can then always refer back to. Now, unfortunately, in my demo tenancy, but I'm going to show you at the end, kind of right at the end of this today, is that there's a policy that you've got to enable to allow transcriptions. Now, when you record meetings now, one of the things that's changed is if transcriptions is enabled, and it's enabled within your 365 tenancy, when you record a session, it will automatically transcribe everything that has been said and who said it, and it will dump all of that information into a Word document. So if you want a transcript of that meeting, you haven't then got to go through the recording. You can just search straight to the relevant time, and you've got that text itself that you want to see. So as an example, of a just obviously just me doing some testing last night. It will produce something like this that will say the transcription. The transcription of the again, this is literally a 2-second meeting with just me saying some random words, but it will transcribe everything that's said and dump it into a Word document, so you can see the date and time of when that started, when it finished, who said what, etc. Now, when we get to the end, just before the Q&A today, I'll show you the transcription of everything that's been said, so hopefully that will work. But again, you can share that then with kind of any meeting participants, rather than just the recording itself. So again, really quite useful. But just to kind of really understand is when you start recording, if that's enabled, transcriptions are enabled by default now. So in this case, I've just started. Did I start recording that meeting? So I've started recording this meeting. You can see it kind of sends a privacy notice up, etc. If I dismiss and leave that meeting now, when you go into the chat section, and it will appear here in a second, you will see the recording of the meeting itself. So you can then go in there and play that recording, which is stored in your OneDrive. And again, I can go away and play that. If transcriptions are enabled, what you will also see next to that file is the actual transcription of everything that was said in that meeting. So the recording will be here, and the transcription will appear to the right hand side of it. That is rolling out. It's enabled in most tenancies now. If that's something that you want switching on and it's not enabled as standard, let us know, and we can sort that out for you. The other thing that you'll see here as well is that we get an attendance report. So sometimes if you're referring back to historical meetings, actually who was there? So just because they were invited, it doesn't necessarily mean they attended it. So I can now go into the attendance report, go to downloads, and I can see exactly who joined that particular meeting. So in this case, that it was only Alex that joined, but I can see the date the date and time they joined, how long for, their email address, their role within the meeting, and their email address in that case. So again, just really trying to track that information is all now available and easily accessible off the back of that. If I just quickly close that meeting down. So let me just exit the other two guys from the meeting. I've just made sure the other two guys that have left that meeting now. We can see within this history that the recording is now stopped because the meeting is actually finished. And within a minute or two, we'll see the recording appear and just kind of pop up so that we can see that. Like I said, if the transcriptions were enabled, we'd see the kind of Word document by the side of that as well. Okay. The next thing I'm just going to just remind people, really, if you've not seen this before. So we've spoken in previous sessions about setting up teams within Teams. So rather than just kind of having using chat and setting up meetings, etc., we can use Teams themselves for particular areas. So we might be running a project, and actually we want to store files and information related to that project. So when we create a team, underneath the team you have channels. So channels are specific areas, within the team itself. So in this case, we've got, general, we've got design, we've got the marketing plan, for this project, etc. And you can store files and documents. Again, all this kind of stuff we've covered off previously. But one of the things I just wanted to make people aware of is, and this is something I find really useful, is if you've got alerts and notifications that happen, because email can very often get cluttered. So if you've got systems that send you email alerts, it might be if there's a fault that's generated, it might be alerts for a whole host of reasons. Sometimes, we've got loads of alerts set up, within our business for what we do, but for some alerts, I don't necessarily want all of those going into my email and coming back to my email and seeing 50 alerts and trying to sift through kind of where genuine email is, etc. So I can now make sure that email notifications go to within Teams channels themselves. I'm using alerts as an example, but this could be just an email notification. If you go next to a channel within Teams, if you click on the three little dots and go to get email address, every single channel that you create within Teams, it has a unique email address that's created for it. So in this case, if I'm using my account system, my ERP system, my any other software that you use that generates email alerts, I can actually get the alert or the notification to go to directly to this channel rather than going to my mailbox. So actually I can get notified directly within Teams and notify the team rather than necessarily just an individual. So just to be aware of that, we can set emails go straight into Teams channels themselves. Again, often goes missed, but again, if that happens, I'm notifying the entire team. I'm not just notifying an individual that's happened. And again, if there is an alert that's created, I can comment and reply and actually say, this has been dealt with or this has been actioned, so that everybody else within my team knows that that's actually taken place. The next thing I'm just going to quickly skip on to, and again, it's just more of a tip than anything else. In this kind of world that we live in now, where we often go from Teams meeting to Teams meeting to Teams meeting, it's quite easy to actually fill your day with back-to-back meetings and not actually have any breaks. So I've seen that almost become quite commonplace now. So a little tip that I'll give you, I kind of covered this off when we did the Outlook update last month. But if you go into Outlook, so if you go into your email platform, if you go into File, go into Options, and go to Calendar, there's two things that I would suggest kind of ticking and enabling in here. So one is, if you're creating a calendar appointment, you can tick this box. So if you're creating a calendar appointment within Outlook, if you tick this box here that says add online meeting to all meetings, it will make sure that no matter what calendar appointment you create, it will always create a Teams link for anybody else to join that meeting. So you haven't got to think about creating a new Teams meeting. If I click new appointment, it will automatically be a Teams meeting. The other piece in here is, and I use this, is to shorten appointments and meetings. So we've very much got used to kind of 15-minute blocks, 30-minute blocks, hour blocks of meetings. So we'll block an hour out, we'll block 30 minutes out. Now, I was finding I was going from meeting to meeting to meeting, and I was literally finishing, finishing at 10:30, 10:31, starting my next meeting, and not having a break, not having time to to check what I need to do or prepare, just actually get a little bit of time back. So if you tick this box here that says shorten appointments and meetings, so if it's less than an hour, we can say, well, actually, if it's an hour appointment, let's make it 50 minutes, because we can probably get it done in 50 minutes anyway. If it's an hour or longer, actually, I might just want to shorten those by 15 minutes. So I've definitely got a break between meetings and I don't end up back to back. It just means that when you're coming to the end of your meeting, you'll get a notification along the top. A little banner will drop down and say that this meeting's coming to an end. So it's a little prompt for everyone not to overrun and again lose a load of time just sat on back-to-back team calls. Okay. So the final thing I'm just going to go into today is an additional app. So again, in previous Teams updates, I've spoken quite a lot about the Planner app. Another app I'm just going to introduce you today is something called Shifts. So if you manage a team or you're managing shifts for the business, again, in the whole hybrid working environment that we work in, some people might be doing 2 or 3 days in the office, 2 or 3 days at home, 4 days in the office, 1 day at home, etc., etc. It can be quite difficult to start to keep track of that and have visibility of where people are. So you might go into the office and go, oh, so-and-so's not in today, I really need to talk to them. By using Shifts, we can really visually and easily show where people are or what shift they're working or what time they're working, etc. So to set up using Shifts, if you go into on the left hand side in Teams, if you go to the 3 little dots and you do just do a search here for the Shifts app. It's not showing in this case because I've already got it pinned, but so if I just unpin that, if I go to the 3 little dots, I can search for the app. In that case, it's already here. So if I click on Shifts, now in this case, I've already created I've already created a shift for my project team but this could be my department. So in my case, I kind of run and manage our engineering department, but if this could be the engineering department, it could be the shifts for the whole business, whatever it may be. Now, once you've created that, and it literally is kind of click on, give it a name, and it will show you this obviously without any additional participants in there. But I can now go to add people in here. So if I click on add people, in this place I can go to Lee. So I want to add Lee's shift in here to make him a member. And I can start to now say, well, when, on Monday, what shift is Lee working? So actually, he might be working from, 8 till 5, which is fine. I might want to give this a custom label. So in this case, I have put, he's kind of working in the office, or I don't know, we might say actually working from client site. So we can add a little note in there. We can add some additional notes off the back of that as well. And then I can just quickly save that. So now, as any member of the team, if I go into the Shifts app, I can very clearly see who is working where, who's working from home. So I can see, Megan here is working from home Monday to Thursday, but she's going to be in the office on Friday. So if I do need to meet up and coordinate with my team, doing this in Shifts is pretty straightforward to do. It's something you'd need to adopt as either a department or as a business to manage this effectively. But the other advantage to this as well is because if you've got the Teams app on your phone, actually, where am I working tomorrow or what am I doing? If you go into Teams on your mobile, you can also go into the Shifts app and I can see exactly where I'm working, etc. You can make shifts a little bit more complex as well, other than kind of just the basic scenario. So actually, we can do things like requesting leave, requesting, if we're adding sickness in or we need to swap shifts with people, we can do that all through. We can all do that through this platform as well. It's there as standard. It's free. There's no additional cost to using shifts, and there's a whole host of different kind of apps in here. You can change the view as well. So again, you might only just want to see what your shifts are. So in this case, I'm in this case I'm obviously signed in as Alex. But you can see along the top, I can also do some time management. So if I want people to clock in and clock out, I can actually get them to do that through this shifts piece as well. So in this case, I'm signed as Alex. I'm going to clock in. So the system will now recognise that I've actually started work for the day. I've logged onto my computer. I've gone to shifts. I've signed in. I'm now at work, and I'm officially at work. I've not just kind of got my laptop on, and it's showing that that Teams is there as a status. At the end of my shift as well, I can then either clock out, or if I'm going on a break. So if I'm going on my lunch, I can do start break, so I can track and monitor breaks as well within there. So now when I clock out, at the end of that process, so I've clocked out, I've finished work for the day, that's kind of me done. What I can now do is if I go into my team and go to settings, I can do an export of the time reporting. So again, as the owner or the manager of this department or the owner of this business, I can then say, well, actually, I just want to do an export now of all my time entries within that time frame. So again, now if I go into my download section, I can now run a full time report that tells me who was in. Again, because there's only kind of some basic information that's gone in there. Obviously, this would show a little bit more detail with more people in there, but I can see the employee's name, when they clocked in, when they clocked out, the start, what the start and end time was, and if they've requested leaves or hours scheduled, you can start to see there's lots and lots of data that we can start to capture within shifts. Again, we've not got a huge amount of time this morning to go through this, but it's just more to make you aware of functionality that's built into Teams that hopefully kind of makes management and reporting of data and information kind of a little bit easier. And again, there's kind of various different tabs along the bottom here as well with additional information. So please feel free to go and have a look at the Shifts app if you think that'd be a benefit to your business. And again, but if you need any kind of help or advice around that, please feel free to reach out to us, and we'll be more than happy to help. So that's really it for today. I say hopefully just really kind of focus on kind of new features and benefits that have happened within the last couple of months. Have we got any questions?
We did have one originally to say, does this work with people outside of your organisation? I think that were about the whiteboard.
Yeah.
Not the whiteboard that you were when you were actually writing.
Yeah, I saw that one pop up. So yeah, in terms of the interactive whiteboard, absolutely. So anybody attending those meetings are able to interact with the whiteboard. So again, whether that be internally or externally.
And then I think that's about it for questions, to be honest. We haven't had any more unless anyone wants to speak up.
Yeah, if there's any other questions, or if you want to unmute your microphone and shout out, quite happy to take questions. So Tony, in terms of whether that work on the internet version, so the whiteboard function does work. The sharing the camera effect, so sharing the physical whiteboard that I did, I don't think that actually works at the moment. Yeah, you do need to be using the desktop version of Teams for that, because I did actually try that last night. So sharing with a physical whiteboard doesn't work in the web app version, but full desktop version, it does absolutely work.
Will it work if I use it and I've got the desktop app, but my audience hasn't?
Correct. Yeah, no, that'll work absolutely
excellent.
fine.
That's fabulous news. Thank you.
Well.
Okay, no worries. Well, I said I'll hang around for kind of 5 or 10 minutes if anyone does want to hang back for any questions. But if not, thank you very much for your time today. Hopefully you found that useful. And we will be sending you out we'll be running kind of future events very similar to this. We've got a load planned over the next quarter. So yeah, just keep we'll send you that information.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Sorry, I had a quick question.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah. So what sort of cameras do you use? You know, when you're talking about the whiteboard, and you know, when you got up and you could see through yourself, and what sort of camera would you use when you're pointing down at your desk or when you're pointing at the whiteboard itself? Is there any specific camera device that?
To be honest, in terms of today, it was a little bit of an older laptop actually, so that wasn't a particularly great camera in that one.
Okay.
But in terms of that, most webcams are absolutely fine. You know, certainly pointing at the whiteboard. It's more having something that you can position at the target that you're intending. So there's a whole
How's
host
that connection made between that camera and your laptop? Essentially, is it just like is it through a wireless connection, or?
Yeah, you can do it. There's a whole host of different cameras you can buy, but
Sure.
you know, it can just be a USB one or a wireless camera.
I see.
Okay. Obviously, the better quality camera that you have, obviously,
Yes.
the better the imagery, you know, is going to be. But yeah, just in terms of getting that up and running, you don't need to spend a fortune to test that, make that work. And again, you can just use an inbuilt camera to the webcam, to your laptop, to kind of get started with that. And in that case, that's all I'm using. It's another laptop that's pointing at that board.
Okay. And I just had one final question in terms of the shifts. So if someone has to say it's been scheduled and then last minute they have to cancel the shift, say they have to be at a different location, is that something that they're also able to do?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So in the so what I do if I just remember where that is. So you can go to what's called requests. So if I just quickly share my screen here again. So in there, you can then just go to at the tab on the top. If you go to requests, I can do a new request.
Okay.
And I can specify reasons for that change, or I can do time off. I can do a swap, or I can kind of offer my shift out to somebody else.
Okay. Okay, that's perfect. Yes.
Okay.
It's all pretty self-explanatory. Yeah, that's good. It's just knowing where all the functions are really, and just having a feel of it and play around really. Yeah.
And that's kind of the whole point of what we've been trying to do. This is it's not necessarily going into the intricate detail of them, because again, I could probably spend an hour just talking about shifts and all the different ways that we could do that. But it's you don't know what you don't know, and it's these things appear in the background, and yes. we just miss that they're there. So just try and make people aware that there is this functionality and it's all built in and it's all free.
Perfect. That's all the questions I had. Yeah.
But yeah.
Thanks for your time today.
Lovely. No worries. Thank you very much.
Take care then.